The restaurant was busy that evening. People were laughing and talking loudly. The clinking of dishes and the sound of footsteps filled the air. The waitress moved quickly between tables, carrying plates of food and glasses of water. She had worked here for many years, and she knew the place well. She liked the job, even if it was tiring. Serving people made her feel useful. In one quiet corner of the restaurant sat a man who looked very different from the other guests. He was dressed neatly in a simple but expensive suit. His face was calm and serious, and he watched the room with sharp eyes. People noticed him but did not approach. He seemed to be someone important. The waitress noticed him too, a little curious about this man who did not speak much or smile. He looked like he carried many thoughts inside his head. She went to his table to take his order. He asked for a simple meal, but then surprised her by asking something unusual. "You play the piano?" he asked quietly. The waitress blinked in surprise. She had not expected this question. She thought for a moment. She could play a little. She had learned when she was younger, but it had been a long time since she touched a piano in front of others. Mostly, she played only at home, for herself, or for her family. "I do," she said softly, "but not very well." The man smiled slightly. "That is enough. There is a piano in the lounge. Would you like to play sometime?" The waitress was unsure. She was shy about playing in front of strangers. What if she made mistakes? What if people laughed? She wanted to say no, but something in the man's calm voice made her think twice. He was not demanding, he seemed kind. Maybe, she said. Slowly the man nodded. "Whenever you feel ready, no pressure. Just play for yourself." The waitress went back to her work, but she kept thinking about the piano and the man's question. It was strange to be asked like this by a stranger. She had missed playing the piano after her shift ended. The restaurant was empty, except for the man. She saw him sitting near the piano, looking at it with a gentle expression. She walked over and sat down at the keys. The piano was old, but still beautiful. She placed her fingers on the keys and played a few quiet notes. The sound was soft and warm. The man listened without saying a word. She played some more, a simple melody that she remembered from when she was a child. It felt good to play again, even if only for a little while. When she finished, the man smiled again. "You have a gift," he said softly. "You just need to find your voice again." The waitress looked at him, surprised. She had never thought of her playing as a gift. To her, it was just something she did in the past. "Thank you," she said quietly. That night she went home feeling different. Piano was not just a piece of furniture anymore. It was a part of her that she had forgotten. Maybe, just maybe, she could try to play again. Not for anyone else, but for herself. Over the next few days, the waitress found herself drawn to the piano more and more. She practiced in the quiet hours after work, letting her fingers remember the songs she once loved. The man who came often never pressured her. He only listened and encouraged her with a gentle smile. The busy restaurant continued to hum with life. But in the small lounge, a quiet story was beginning, a story of a waitress who might find her music again. The man's interest was not just a passing thought. It was a spark that might change her life in ways she could not yet understand. She still worked hard, still served the customers with a smile, but inside her, something was waking up. The piano keys were calling her back, and she was ready to listen. The next few days felt different for the waitress. Something inside her had changed after she touched the piano again. Her hands still remembered the keys, even though it had been years. Every night after work, when the restaurant became quiet and the tables were empty, she would sit down and play softly. She didn't play for anyone, only for herself. The man in the suit came almost every evening. He would sit in his usual corner, quietly drinking his tea and listening. He never clapped or made a big deal about it. He just sat there and nodded now and then, like he understood what each note meant. At first, she felt nervous around him. She didn't want to make mistakes. But the more she played, the less she thought about him, and the more she got lost in the music. She started to enjoy it again. One evening, after she played a slow tune, he walked up to her and asked gently, "Do you know how special your sound is?" She gave a small laugh. "I'm not that good. You don't have to be perfect," he said. "You just have to be real, and you are." We didn't know what to say to that. No one had ever said anything like that to her. Not in school. Not at home, and definitely not at work. Still, she found herself going back to the piano again and again. The other staff noticed too. Some of them would pause near the lounge to listen. Few even smiled at her when she finished a song. Gave her confidence, but deep down, she was still unsure. She wasn't a real musician. She was just a waitress who happened to know how to play. And the idea of playing for the entire restaurant in front of strangers still scared her. One night, the man looked at her and said, "There will come a moment when you'll have to play in front of others. Not because I want you to, but because your music deserves to be heard." She stayed quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I'm not ready." He didn't argue. He just nodded. "When you are, you'll know." The next day, something unexpected happened. A famous local chef came to the restaurant. He was friends with the manager and wanted to try the food. The staff was extra careful, making sure everything was perfect. The lights were a little dimmer. The music was soft, and the mood felt more serious. The man in the suit was there too, sitting quietly in his corner. He seemed to notice the change in the air. As the evening went on, the restaurant got more crowded. The lounge was empty, but the piano sat there, silent. The waitress kept looking at it. Her heart beat faster every time she glanced its way. After her shift, she changed clothes and walked past the piano, as usual. She wasn't planning to play that night. But the man stood up and said gently, "Just one song." She stopped. Noise in the room grew louder. People were laughing and talking. The clatter of forks and knives filled the space. She looked at the man. His expression was calm. He wasn't forcing her. He was simply asking. She took a deep breath, walked slowly to the piano, and sat down. Her fingers hovered above the keys. Unsure, she didn't know what to play. Her hands felt cold. The room behind her was full of noise. But then she closed her eyes. She thought about the little song she used to play for her younger brother at night when he couldn't sleep. A gentle melody, simple, soft. She began to play, and slowly. The sound of her music rose above the noise. She still didn't know what would happen next. But at that moment, she played not for the man, not for the guests, not even for the restaurant. She played for herself, and that was the first step. In a small village, a cat named Whiskers discovered a magic fish in a pond. The fish promised 3 wishes in exchange for its freedom. Whiskers wished for endless fish, a cozy bed, and a bell that rang softly. The fish granted all 3 wishes, and swam away, leaving Whiskers content and purring in the sun. The soft tune echoed gently across the restaurant. Her hands moved slowly over the piano keys, and each note felt like a breath taken after holding it in for too long. It wasn't a complex song. It wasn't loud or showy. It came from her heart. At first, people kept talking. Their conversations carried on, as if the music was just background noise. But then something happened. One by one, heads began to turn. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Voices lowered. A few guests stopped eating altogether and looked toward the lounge. The soft, simple music had something in a kind of honesty that people didn't expect in a place like this. The waitress didn't look up. She kept her eyes on the keys. She didn't even know the room was growing quiet. Her mind was somewhere, else deep in old memories, in emotions she had buried long ago. She remembered her small apartment, her brother falling asleep beside her, and her tired mother listening from the next room. That little melody had lived in her hands for years, even when she had stopped playing. When she finally pressed the last key and lifted her fingers, there was silence. Not the kind of silence that comes from nothing happening, but the kind that comes when people are too touched to speak. Then, slowly, a few people clapped. More joined in. And suddenly, the whole restaurant was full of soft, respectful applause. The waitress looked up, surprised. She hadn't played to impress anyone. She had just played a song she remembered. Her cheeks turned red, but she smiled. It was the first time she felt proud in a long time. The man in the suit stood in the back, watching her with calm eyes. He didn't clap. He simply nodded, the way someone might when they see a flower bloom after a long winter. After the crowd settled, she quietly got up and walked back toward the kitchen. On the way, several people stopped her. A woman said, "That was beautiful." "Thank you," a young man added. "You should do that more often." She didn't know how to respond. She just smiled and said thank you, again and again. Later, when most of the guests had left and the restaurant had grown quiet once more, the man in the suit walked over to her. "You did well," he said. She gave a nervous laugh. "Didn't expect that? I thought I'd mess up." He shook his head. "Music isn't about perfection, it's about truth. Tonight you played the truth." His words stayed in her mind as she walked home. That night she couldn't sleep. Her heart was still beating fast. She thought about the way people had listened, the way the noise had faded, and how the piano had become her voice. For the next few days, things changed a little. Customers started asking when the piano would be played again. A few staff members told her how proud they were. Even the manager, who usually just focused on tables and orders, told her, "You gave this place something special." She still did her usual work, taking orders, serving food, clearing tables, but there was something new in her steps. A kind of quiet joy. She was still a waitress, but now she was also something else, a musician in the making. Each night after her shift, she practiced a little more. Not to impress anyone, but to discover what else was hidden in her fingers. The man continued to come, always quiet, always watching. Sometimes he would leave without saying a word. Other times he would offer a soft comment, like that piece had color, or you played with heart tonight. She didn't know exactly who he was or why he cared so much. But she knew one thing for sure: his presence had helped her remember who she used to be, and maybe who she still could become. That week, the restaurant was busier than ever. A popular food blogger had posted about the place online, calling it a hidden gem with unexpected charm. People started visiting not just for the food, but to hear the mysterious waitress who played the piano. At first, she felt shy when people asked her to play, wasn't used to attention. Most of her life, she had been invisible, just another face in the crowd, just another hand delivering plates. But now, things felt different. Even though she still wore the same uniform and tied her hair the same way, guests looked at her with curiosity and kindness. They would ask quietly, "Will you be playing tonight?" and smile when she nodded. One evening, the manager called her aside. His tone was serious, but his eyes were warm. "There's a group coming in tonight," he said. "A private event, some very important guests. I told them about your playing." Her heart skipped a beat. "You did what?" He chuckled. "Want music? I thought of you." She didn't know whether to feel honored or scared. These weren't regular customers. They were well-dressed, powerful-looking people who arrived in expensive cars. They walked in with quiet confidence, the kind that made others move out of the way. She watched them from behind the counter as they sat down at their reserved tables. The man in the suit was already there, sitting in his usual corner. He gave her a small nod, as if to say, "It's time." Her palms were sweating. Her heart raced. She had played in front of strangers before, but never a group like this. What if she made a mistake? What if they didn't like it? She stood near the piano, staring at the keys. Her legs felt heavy. Her fingers felt stiff. Then she heard the noise, laughter, glasses clinking, loud voices echoing off the walls. The room was alive with sound, but not the peaceful kind. It was a noisy, proud kind of energy, like everyone wanted to be heard louder than the others. She sat down slowly. No one noticed. Not yet. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and started playing. It was a slow piece, something soft, something gentle. A tune that didn't shout for attention, but instead invited silence. At first, no one reacted. The noise continued. Plates were passed around. People laughed and talked. But then, little by little, the room began to shift. The sound of the piano floated through the air like a whisper in a storm. And somehow, that whisper started to calm the storm. Voices lowered. Chairs turned. Heads tilted toward her by the middle of the song. The restaurant had changed. The noise faded. The room grew still. The only sound left was her music. She didn't know how it happened. She didn't know why. But the piano spoke in a way her voice never could. It asked for nothing but gave something to everyone who listened. When the final note hung in the air, she opened her eyes. People were staring not with shock or confusion, but with something else. Respect. Some even looked at, little emotional then. Gentle claps began. Not loud, not wild, just real.
A real appreciation.
She stood up slowly. Her hands were still shaking a little. She gave a small bow, then quietly walked back to the counter. The man in the suit met her eyes from across the room. He gave the smallest smile and a nod that said everything. That night, she didn't sleep much. Not because she was nervous, but because something inside her had changed. For the first time, she felt seen, not just as a waitress, but as someone who could move hearts. Without saying a word, the night of the music hall performance finally arrived. She stood outside the old building, her hands cold, her heart beating fast. The hall looked beautiful. The lights were soft, glowing through the tall windows. Gentle hum of voices floated. From inside, people were already filling the seats, waiting not for a famous star, not for a trained performer, but for a quiet waitress who had once played a simple tune in a restaurant corner. She took a deep breath. The man in the suit stood beside her. He didn't speak much. He just looked at her, calm and steady as always. "You don't have to prove anything," he said softly. "Just do what you've always done. Play with heart." She nodded slowly, then walked through the doors inside. The hall was full. People from all walks of life had come, young and old, regular guests from the restaurant, strangers who had heard her story, even a few music lovers who didn't usually visit small events. Some had flowers. Others just had quiet smiles. She stepped onto the small stage. A piano stood waiting for her in the center.
Oh.
It looked grand and polished, shining under the warm lights. She sat down, her fingers resting on the keys. The room was still. Then she began to play. At first, she played a slow tune, one she had written during a rainy night years ago, when she had felt forgotten by the world. The sound floated gently across the hall. The audience leaned in, listening closely. Some closed their eyes. Others watched. Her hands moved like waves on water. Each song she played told a part of her story, a melody from her childhood, a tune she once hummed while walking to work, a piece she created in silence when life felt too heavy to speak. She didn't need to talk. The music said it all. As the final song came to an end, she pressed the last note gently and lifted her hands from the keys. Silence filled the hall for a moment, then applause, real applause, not rushed or polite, but full of emotion. Some people stood, others wiped their eyes. Flowers were placed near the stage. One man simply placed his hand over his heart. She stood up slowly. Overwhelmed, tears touched her eyes, not because she was sad, but because she had finally been heard. After the performance, people came to meet her. They thanked her, hugged her, and shared how her music had touched them. One woman whispered, "I felt like you were playing my story too." Another said, "I haven't felt peace like that in years." She didn't know what to say. She just smiled and nodded, holding back happy tears. Later, as the hall emptied and the lights dimmed, the man in the suit walked over. "You muted a room," he said, smiling. "With just one song." She looked at him, still not believing it. I never thought this would happen," she whispered. "You didn't force it," he replied. "You just let the music speak." She stepped outside into the cool night air. The stars were out. The wind was light. Everything felt calm, quiet like the end of a chapter. But she knew this wasn't the end. She still had more to learn, more to play, and more to share. Her journey wasn't over. She had started out as a simple waitress, but now she was more, not because she was famous, not because of the stage, but because she had dared to believe in something that lived quietly inside her. Her gift, her voice, her music. And from that night on, whenever she sat down at a piano, no matter where it was, people listened, not just with their ears, but with their hearts. In a small village, a cat named Whiskers discovered a magic fish in a pond. The fish promised 3 wishes in exchange for its freedom. Whiskers wished for endless fish, a cozy bed, and a bell that rang softly. The fish granted all 3 wishes and swam away, leaving Whiskers content and purring in the sun. After that night, everything felt different. The waitress still worked the same hours. She still cleaned tables, served drinks, and smiled at every customer. But now, people saw her in a new light. Some called her the piano girl, while others simply waited silently at their tables, hoping she would sit at the piano again. She didn't play every night, only when her heart felt ready. And each time, it felt like sharing a piece of herself with the room. There were no big announcements, no spotlight. Just her, the piano, and the sound that quietly wrapped around the people listening. The man in the suit still came almost every evening. He never missed a night she played. Sometimes he watched. Sometimes he closed his eyes and just listened. But he never gave instructions or pushed her. He just supported her from the background. One day he waited until her shift ended. The restaurant was calm, the lights were soft, and most of the customers had left. She was wiping down a table when he approached her. "There's something I'd like to ask," he said kindly. She turned to him, curious. "What is it?" "There's a small event next week," he continued. "A private gathering, just a few people. I would like you to play there." Her heart jumped. "Play? Outside the restaurant?" He nodded. "Yes, you'll be paid of course, but more than that, it's a chance. Nothing too formal. It's just music." She looked down at the cloth in her hand. Her fingers tightened around it. Part of her wanted to say no right away. She was just a waitress. She wasn't a professional musician. She didn't belong in any kind of event, but another part of her remembered the silence that filled the restaurant. When she played, the way people had listened, the way the music made her feel. "Will there be a lot of people?" she asked nervously. "Not too many," he said, "and they're kind. They'll listen. That's all that matters." She hesitated, then slowly nodded. "Okay, I'll try." He gave a small smile. "That's all I ask." The week passed quickly. She practiced every evening after work. Some songs were new, others were pieces she had played since she was young. She didn't try to be perfect. She just tried to be honest with every note, every pause, every soft sound from the piano. On the day of the event, she wore simple clothes, nothing flashy, just a clean dress, tied hair, and a calm face hiding her racing heart. The place was a quiet hall, not too big, not too fancy, but filled with soft lights, comfortable chairs, and people who smiled warmly when she entered. The piano sat near the center of the room. It looked polished and proud, like it was waiting just for her. The man in the suit walked over. "Just be yourself," he said gently. She nodded, took a deep breath, and sat down as her fingers touched the keys. The nervous feeling faded. The room melted away. She played the first song slowly, letting it rise and fall like waves. People listened with quiet respect. No phones, no talking, no noise. One song became 2, then 3. Each piece felt like a story she was finally ready to tell. By the time she finished, the room was silent, just like it had been in the restaurant that first night. Then came the applause, not loud or showy but full of heart. She stood up, cheeks, warm eyes, wide with disbelief. People lined up just to thank her. Some said her music reminded them of childhood. Others said it made them feel calm again after a long, hard week. That night, as she walked home under the streetlights, the wind gentle on her face, she finally smiled to herself. She was more than just a waitress now. She was a storyteller through sound, and something deep inside her knew. This was only the beginning. The next few weeks felt like a dream. After the small event, word began to spread. People started talking about the soft-spoken waitress who played the piano with such heart. She didn't have a fancy stage or big speakers or lights, but her music made people feel something real. That's what they remembered. She didn't expect much to change. She thought she would return to her normal routine, serving tables, smiling at guests, and quietly practicing on the old restaurant piano after closing time. But things didn't go back to how they were. More people started visiting the restaurant, not just for the food, but to hear her play. Some waited hours just to catch a few songs. Others called ahead to ask if the girl on the piano would be playing that evening. One night, the restaurant was packed. Every table was full. People stood in corners and near the hallway, hoping to get a better view of the small lounge where the piano sat. She felt nervous. But the moment she sat down, everything else faded. Her hands moved with ease. She didn't read from any sheets. Every note came from memory and from feeling. The room slowly fell silent, like always. And by the time she played her last note, even the loudest voices had softened. That night, after the shift ended, the manager pulled her aside. "You've brought something special to this place," he said. "Something we didn't even know we needed." She gave a small smile. She never expected so much attention. She had only wanted to play again for herself. Later, as she stepped out into the cool night air, she saw the man in the suit waiting near the corner. As usual, he didn't rush to speak, simply walked beside her. "You've touched many hearts," he said quietly. "I still feel like I'm just me," she replied. He smiled. And that's exactly why they listen. For a while, the city was quiet at that hour. Streetlights flickered, and the air smelled like rain was coming. Then he stopped walking. "There's something else I'd like you to consider," he said. She looked at him curious. "There's an old music hall. Not too big, but beautiful. It's been closed for a while, but I've arranged to open it for one evening. No pressure. Just a chance for you to share your gift with more people if you want to." She didn't answer right away. Her heart was full already. Was she ready for something bigger? He didn't push. "You don't have to decide now. Think about it. Your music doesn't just fill the room, it fills people." She went home that night with many thoughts in her mind. She looked at her small keyboard near her bed. It had missing keys and scratched paint, but it was where she had first learned to love music. She ran her fingers over it, thinking about all the years she had stayed silent. All the time, she thought her talent didn't matter. Now, things were changing. The next few days, she kept practicing. She played early in the morning, in quiet corners, and after work. She tried new songs, ones she had written in secret years ago. She didn't know if they were good, but they were hers. She thought about the music hall. The idea still scared her. What if the crowd was bigger? What if she messed up? But then she remembered something the man had once said. It's not about being perfect. It's about being true. And her music, whether played to 5 people or 50, was always true. She finally made her decision. Not because she wanted to impress anyone, but because she had something to say. And this time, she would say it through the piano for everyone to hear.